Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog and join the Progressive Army.
I respect workers' right to use their options under the collective bargaining system, and I understand the workers' frustration. Over generations, auto workers sacrificed so much to keep the industry alive and strong, especially through the economic crisis and the pandemic. Workers deserve a fair share of the benefits they helped create for an enterprise. I do appreciate that the parties have been working round the clock. And when I first called them at the very first day of their negotiations, I said, please stay at the table as long as you can to try to work this out. And they've been around the clock, and the companies have made some significant offers. But I believe they should go further to ensure record corporate profits mean record contracts for the UAW. Let me say that again. Record corporate profits, which they have, should be shared by record contracts for the UAW.
That was the voice of President Joe Biden showing support for the United Auto Workers who have gone on strike as of midnight last night. They were unable to come into an agreement with the big three automakers there in Detroit. And so 150,000 auto workers have agreed to go on strike. Now, as it stands today, only about 13,000 of those 150,000 workers have already walked off their jobs as a part of the strategy that was put forward by the president of the UAW, Shawn Fain, which is keeping all of the executives guessing. Where is the strike actually happening? Where is the next stoppage of work going to occur? The executives don't know because of this particular strategy being employed by the UAW. Here's more from President Joe Biden.
Auto companies have seen record profits, including in the last few years, because of the extraordinary skill and sacrifices of the UAW workers. But those record profits have not been shared fairly, in my view, with those workers. Just as the Treasury Department has released a report pointing out that the most comprehensive report ever dealing with how unions are good for both union workers and non-union workers and the overall economy. Unions raise workers' wages, they said, incomes, increase home ownership, increase retirement savings, increase access to critical benefits like sick leave and child care, and reduce inequality, all of which strengthen our economy for all workers. That's because unions raise standards across the workplaces and entire industries, pushing up wages and strengthening benefits for everyone. That's why strong unions are critical to a growing economy.
That's why strong unions are critical for a growing economy. I believe that might be one of the most salient remarks with regards to unions coming from the president yet. Unions are critical for a growing economy. Unions are critical for a middle class. I want to play a clip of UAW President Shawn Fain. He says that the cost of labor that goes into a vehicle is only 5% of the vehicle. These companies could double our wages and they could not raise the price of vehicles and they would still make billions of dollars. That's what it means to have record profits and to be stealing wages from workers. You have plenty of headroom to make adjustments and to make it right.
You heard the CEO of Ford say that it would bankrupt them if they met your demands. What'd you think of that?
I think it's a joke. You know what? They could double our pay right now. Labor, the cost of labor that goes into a vehicle is 5% of the vehicle. They could double our wages and they could not raise the price of vehicles and they would still make billions of dollars. It's a lie like everything else that comes out of their mouth.
Now, I can't pretend like I knew that the cost of labor that goes into the price of a vehicle is only around 4 to 5%. But the absurdity of labor being disrespected that much when you consider the productivity of the average American has increased 60% since 2000, and wages for the average American has only increased some 3 to 4% in the same time period. It's not a mistake. That's not a bug. That's a feature. The entire agenda is to minimize the cost of labor and maximize the profits. Listen to this clip of General Motors CEO Mary Barra, who makes about $29 million a year while refusing to do anything to increase the wages of the people who help her make that money.
You've seen a 34% pay increase in your salary. You make almost $30 million. Why should your workers not get the same type of pay increases that you're getting leading the company? Well, if you look at compensation, my compensation, 92% of it is based on performance of the company. I think one of the strong aspects of the way our compensation for our represented employees is designed is not only are we putting a 20% increase on the table, but if you're getting a 34% pay increase over 4 years and you're offering 20% to employees right now, do you think that's fair? Well, I think when you look at the overall structure and the fact that 92% is based on performance, and you look at what we've been doing of sharing in the profitability when the company does well, I think we've got a very compelling offer on the table, and that's the focus I have right now.
Right now was the portion that was clipped. Here's the interesting thing about the benefits package and all of the generous, things that she says is offered to workers is that it's not offered to all workers. There's a two-tiered system that the UAW is trying to get rid of. They're trying to abolish the two-tier system that gives, they categorize as top-tier employees. I don't like that categorization, but that's what it's called. They're top-tier employees versus their lower-tier employees. The lower-tier employees don't receive those benefits, those pensions, those health benefits. And, well, they get health benefits, but they're far less generous. Right. And so one of the things that the UAW is trying to get rid of is that two-tiered system, because right now that two-tier system is how this CEO gets to brag about how generous their benefits are, but it's not applied to all of the workers. Just keep in mind in terms of she makes $29 million a year. The average worker, according to CBS News with the UAW, is making about $28 an hour. $28 an hour, which in some places is a really decent living, right? There are a lot of people who would be happy to make that kind of money. But when you are working in an industry that is making record profits, you as a collective body of workers have the right to demand better. You have the right to demand more, especially when your productivity and your efficiency has skyrocketed over the last 20 years and the wealth has all gone to the CEOs. I want to play one last clip. This is of former President Donald Trump when asked about the strike. Whose side is he on? He was asked this by Kristen Welker, and this was his response. And I want you to really listen to how he prevaricates and does his best to avoid the question, but at the end, he reveals what side he's really on.
My question for you, Mr. President, whose side are you on in this?
I'm on the side of making our country great. The auto workers are not going to have any jobs when you come right down to it, because if you take a look at what they're doing with electric cars are going to be made in China. The auto workers are not going to have any. I'll tell you what. The auto workers are being sold down the river by their leadership, and their leadership should endorse Trump. The reason is you got to have choice. Like in school, I want school choice. I also want choice for cars. If somebody wants gasoline, if somebody wants all electric, they can do whatever they want. But they're destroying the consumer, and they're destroying the auto workers. The auto workers will not have any jobs, Kristen, because all of these cars are going to be made in China. The electric cars automatically are going to be made in China.
No doubt that these companies are going to seek out the cheapest labor they can possibly find. That's why it is incumbent upon us as a matter of policy to not allow them to push us into a race to the bottom to see which state, or in this case, which nation, is going to give them the cheapest labor. We'll be back with more of the Benjamin Dixon Show right after this break.
I'm in line with the stars, I'm in sync with the earth. 10 toes deep, flower child from the turf. I never switch sides, like even when I die, I'ma ride for the squad, light up tires in the hearse. I've been on the vibe, kinda hard to describe. I'm in between, I'm good and it's fine, but I'm tired of the grind. Then I come alive in the night to realize I'm in the middle of the time of my life. I'm never so packed for the stack, never lied on the rap. Got a bag from the way that I write it. Queen looking Tyson, do that ass survive, doing 80 to the house, then I hit it.
Welcome back to the Benjamin Dixon Show. Visit us online at thebenjamindixonshow.com.
Welcome back. Welcome back. If you want to know how political propaganda works, right now today, right-wing conservatives are ecstatic because 3 men who were accused of providing support to a plot to kidnap Michigan's Democratic governor, Gretchen Whitmer, they were acquitted by jurors earlier today. And the narrative that is, well, first, let me slow down. I don't know if you remember earlier during the pandemic when Michigan became ground zero for the war against vaccines and the war against mask mandates. And there literally was a plot to kidnap and potentially harm Democratic Governor Gretchen Whitmer. That plot was foiled and several people were arrested, charged. And today, if the only thing you knew about this story came as a result of you watching the news today, you would believe that everyone involved was acquitted. That's not what happened, but that is how propaganda works. Let's go to the receipts. Adam Fox was accused or charged of kidnapping, conspiracy, and conspiracy to use a weapon of mass destruction. He was found guilty and sentenced to 16 years. Joseph Morrison, charged with materially aiding a terrorist and membership in a gang, found guilty, sentenced to 10 to 20 years. Ty Garbin, all of this is readily accessible, but you actually do have to just do the search. You have to look and not depend on what you see and hear from social media, who's currently right-wing media is trying to convince us that everything related to this conspiracy to kidnap Governor Gretchen Whitmer was a false flag. But if it was a false flag, then you have Ty Garbin, who pleaded guilty. He pleaded guilty and got 6 years. Barry Croft found guilty, 19 years, 7 months. Caleb Franks pleaded guilty, 4 years. Then you have Pete Masuko, found guilty, 12 to 20 years. You have Paul Beller, found guilty of materially aiding a terrorist and gang membership, 7 to 20 years. So there are plenty of people who have been involved in this plot and this conspiracy to kidnap and harm Michigan Governor, Democrat Gretchen Whitmer. But if you look at the timeline today, the conservative movement is celebrating as if these 3 men who were found not guilty, they were found not guilty. If we dig into their charges, you can see they were being charged with aiding and abetting this plot, supplying guns. But ultimately, because it seems as though they did not know the purpose for which they were supplying guns, that's probably how they got off. But that's 3 out of the entire group, many of whom have already been found guilty or pled guilty. But as you look at how the propaganda is fomenting on social media, you would think that this is a validation of every single conservative idea in the history of conservative ideas. And I know that's being hyperbolic, but this is the level of celebrating. I mean, you would honestly think that this was like their OJ moment. They really are excited about these 3 individuals getting off, but completely erased the existence of every other individual who has already been found guilty or pled guilty. But again, that's how propaganda works. All right, let's go to this patron party.
Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show and get twice the content and unfiltered interviews without any of the commercial interruptions.
Here we go. Very special welcome to our newest patron, Emo Dragon. What's going on, my guy? Thank you for becoming a patron. This entire patron party is for you. Somebody turn it up. You too can become a part of this prestigious and most prodigious patron family by going to patreon.com/The BPD Show, where you get twice the content, none of the commercial interruptions, and you get access to our upcoming, revitalized, and renewed patron parties. Patreon.com/The BPD Show, and we will be back right after this break, unless you're a patron, in which case you don't get commercials. You just get the beats.
Welcome back to The Benjamin Dixon Show. Visit us online at thebenjamindixonshow.com.
Welcome back. Earlier this week, the CDC voted by a vote of 13-1 in favor of recommending a new COVID-19 vaccine for basically everyone from ages 6 to 65 and older. The purpose of this vaccine, of this booster shot, obviously is to deal with the ever mutating coronavirus, which continues to mutate because, well, we as an American society, we have opted to just, say F it and just go with the pandemic and not do what's necessary, like wearing masks, sheltering in place, mask mandates, vaccine mandates. We're living in the anti-science stage of American decline. In fact, that decline is so acute. This next clip I'm getting ready to play for you is of the Florida Surgeon General. And I laugh, I kid you not, this next clip has to be one of the dumbest things I have ever heard a medical professional say on national TV, no less. He was on Fox News with Sean Hannity. Here is Ron DeSantis's pick for Surgeon General Joseph Ladapo, as he claims that he knows better than the CDC. This one Surgeon General says that the vaccine is not safe to take, and he said that to all of Fox News viewers last night. Take a listen in.
I think most people in the United States recognize that the safety of these vaccines is certainly unlike flu, which they always try and pair it with and compare it to. But this is a very different type of medication, and it's an unsafe medication. I mean, it's really unfortunate that this is what so many Americans have been persuaded to take.
How could we ever trust people like Joe Biden? If you get the vaccine, you're never going to get COVID. If you get the
question cuts off, but I wanted you to hear Sean Hannity and his propaganda technique, allowing that Florida Surgeon General to say something not only without following up on the erroneous nature of what he said, the lie. He didn't follow up on the lie. He just pivoted to something that's easily arguable and debatable, right? Should we trust Joe Biden when they told us you wouldn't catch COVID-19? No, who told us that we would never catch COVID-19 if we had the vaccine? I don't remember one person, one entity, one organization saying that you would not catch COVID-19. But what I did see, without a shadow of a doubt, is that those people who were vaccinated and they did contract COVID-19, they did not suffer or die at the rates that everyone else did. Now, someone on Twitter said this earlier, and I absolutely thought it was brilliant. He said, every reporter going forward must ask Ron DeSantis if this Florida Surgeon General that he picked would be a pick for the United States Surgeon General, because that in and of itself would be disqualifying for Ron DeSantis. Ron DeSantis has picked an opportunistic quack of a doctor, right, who has clearly been assigned to do one thing, and that is undermine the state of Florida's ability to recover from COVID-19 by spreading misinformation from the highest office in the state with regard to this pandemic. He has been accused, the Florida Surgeon General has been accused of personally changing data with regard to COVID-19, personally doing that. And now he is out here on a campaign against the booster shot because, well, this week, the CDC announced the approval of a new, not only the CDC announced it, but also the FDA approved it. Now, I don't have full blind trust in any of these institutions, but because I'm not a scientist, nor do I have the bandwidth or the time to go and do these studies myself, I have to offer these institutions a measure of my trust. Now, if you ask me, a competition between trusting the CDC and the FDA over trusting someone like Ron DeSantis and his Florida Surgeon General, when they have clearly decided to side on the side of anti-science, on the side of anti-public health. They have opted on the side of doing everything they possibly can to undermine our collective ability to defeat this pandemic. If you ask me who I'm going to choose, I'm still going to choose the CDC. The CDC did not do a good job with this pandemic. And I could tell you exactly when they stopped doing a good job was when they gave in. and said, hey, hell, we're just going to go with what the masses say, right? Some of the recommendations, and actually, let me take a step back. Here's another thing the CDC did. They went along with a lot of corporations like Delta Airlines. When Delta Airlines wanted to get rid of the mask mandate, the CDC just basically said, meh. So this is not a statement of trust for the CDC. But if you ask me if I trust that doctor more, that Dr. Ladopa, whatever his name is, Ron DeSantis's pick, the guy we just listened to, who do I trust more? That man or the scientist behind the vaccine? Yeah. So anyway, when are you getting your booster shot? I am going to get mine next week because apparently I've got to do some traveling. I'll tell you more about that later. I got to hit the road and get on a couple of planes. And if you know me, you know I don't like flying anyway, but you certainly know I don't like flying in a pandemic. I think I'll be on the plane, not only boosted, but also with a full mask because people just don't care. And when I say a full mask, I mean like a gas mask with my own oxygen supply, because these people really do not care if they get on planes, go into classrooms, go back to work sick. And that makes sense when you consider we have people like Ron DeSantis and Florida Surgeon General Joseph Ladapo out here spreading misinformation and encouraging the most exposure possible. Speaking of labor, I am a little late with this clip. I'm sure you've seen it and heard it already. It is a clip of Tim Gurner, who is the CEO of the Gurner Group. Okay. And this is perhaps the most clear example that we're going to find of what CEOs really think about their employees. More precisely, I think this is the clearest example of what capital honestly believes about labor.
I think the problem that we've had is that we have people decided they didn't really want to work so much anymore through COVID, and that has had a massive issue on productivity. Tradies have definitely pulled back on productivity. They have been paid a lot to do not too much in the last few years. And we need to see that change. We need to see unemployment rise. Unemployment has to jump 40, 50% in my view. We need to see pain in the economy. We need to remind people that they work for the employer, not the other way around. I mean, there's been a systematic change where employees feel the employer is extremely lucky to have them, as opposed to the other way around. So it's a dynamic that has to change. We've got to kill that attitude, and that has to come through hurting the economy, which is what the whole global the world is trying to do. The governments around the world are trying to increase unemployment to get that to some sort of normality. And we're seeing it. I think every employer now is seeing it. I mean, there is definitely massive layoffs going off. People might not be talking about it, but people are definitely laying people off, and we're starting to see less arrogance in the employment market, and that has to continue because that will cascade across the cost
sweet
balance.
Jesus. Sometimes I should listen to the full clips before I actually play them in this show. Because if I had known that he went this far, I probably would have saved it for the patrons only, because there's some things I need to say about this guy. But I'll let me see if I could do it without, literally with zero profanity. This is how evil these people really are. Yeah, I can. You know how I can discuss this without any profanity? I have to talk about this from a religious, spiritual perspective. This is downright evil. Right. These are people who, if they could get slave labor, they would do it and say that it's the right thing to do because it's in the best interest of their shareholders. They have to they have a mandate to maximize profits. They would absolutely accept slave labor. CEOs are currently accepting sweatshop labor all across the globe. There is a disposition. Before I even get to the disposition, let's talk about the inherent conflict, right? There's an inherent conflict between the profit motive and the best interest of the majority of human beings on this planet, the workers. As long as CEOs and corporations and their shareholders are allowed to seek profit without end, we will always see this paradigm where the majority of the people on this planet who are workers are going to be told that they have to suffer. They have to suffer and they have to have the right disposition towards the CEOs and the companies. Do you see the entitlement to our labor that these monsters have? Do you see the entitlement to our lives? Not just our lives, but our entire life force, like our energy. They expect to be able to drain us and leave us with nothing. Not even sensible wages, not even reasonable wages. We just got through talking about the UAW, the labor the price of your $40,000 car, which is like a pretty inexpensive car these days, only 4% of that is labor. The general disregard for the value of what we bring to the table has always been dismissed, devalued, and sabotaged by the likes of this Gerner guy. He's not saying anything that we didn't already know. He's just dumb enough to say it publicly. He's since come out and apologized for it. No, don't apologize for your deeply held belief. No. Don't apologize unless you are turning away from, repenting from those deeply held, deeply sadistic beliefs. Let me play it again so I can give you real-time commentary.
I think the problem that we've had is that we have people decided they didn't really want to work so much anymore through COVID, and that has had a massive issue on productivity.
Okay, never mind the fact that worker productivity / efficiency is up 60% since 2000, like we stated earlier in the show. Several companies have reported that their workers were more efficient during the pandemic when they worked from home. Let's continue.
They have been paid a lot to do not too much in the last few years.
Literally provides no source for that claim except for his feelings. He's got a gut feeling that workers are getting paid to do not much.
We need to see that change. We need to see unemployment rise. Unemployment has to jump 40, 50% in my view. We need to see pain in the economy. We need to remind people that they work for the employer, not the other way around.
Because they sincerely need a type of system where you are grateful to take whatever wages they give you. And that you are so stressed that you would not even consider leaving that job. This is one of the reasons that healthcare is tied to your employment, so that if you're in a desperate situation, you would never leave your job because you got to keep those benefits coming. You've got to keep that healthcare insurance going.
There's been a systematic change where employees feel the employer is extremely lucky to have them, as opposed to the other way around. So it's a dynamic that has to change. We've got to kill that attitude, and that has to come through hurting the economy, which is what the whole global, the world is trying to do. The governments around the world are trying to increase unemployment.
So to be sure, he's saying that the governments should and are willing to harm their economies to keep the proper attitude instilled in the workers. They are willing to hurt the economy to make sure that you, the worker, don't get beside yourself and get too bougie and start asking for, benefits, better dental insurance. Maybe I could get $2 more an hour so I could buy me a sandwich after work, No, they're willing to harm the economy to keep you in check.
And we're seeing it. I think every employer now is seeing it. I mean, there is definitely massive layoffs going off. People might not be talking about it, but people are definitely laying people off, and we're starting to see less arrogance in the employment market, and that has to continue because that will cascade across the cost balance.
So they're willing to lay people off collectively. There should be a RICO case involved in this, but that's the Department of Labor's responsibility here, right? To see these unfair labor practices in action and see that companies are collectively deciding to harm the economy so that they can get rid of the arrogant disposition in workers. I promise you, if I've ever seen a piece of propaganda that's specifically designed to turn people into communists, the greatest piece of propaganda I have ever seen, I feel like Dr. Karl Mack, ever seen in my life, to push someone to being a full communist, or at a minimum, come on over here to me as a socialist. It's this clip from this CEO who manages, I looked up his little girding firm, and I guess it's not so little. They manage like $9.5 billion of investments. So extremely wealthy, extremely rich. But you know what matters to him the most? What keeps him up at night? How much money you make as a worker? How arrogant you are? Do you have respect for your employer? Do you understand that you work for the employer and the employer doesn't work for you? Patrons, stay tuned. We'll have more of a conversation after this. Everyone else, patreon.com/the BPD show. If not, I will see you next week.
The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.patreon.com/the BPD show and support the Benjamin Dixon Show. If you like this episode, be sure to share, like, and subscribe.